These chemicals are designed to kill. They're designed to kill wildlife.
I mean, other than needles and knives and stuff, I found 2 guns in a river.
Everything is falling apart, and when you're doing that badly, I think serious action has to be taken.
I started this documentary because I stumbled upon a headline that blew my mind. Every single freshwater shrimp in rural England tested positive for cocaine. My first thought was, why on earth were scientists drug testing river wildlife in the first place? Spoiler alert, they weren't. It was an accidental discovery. So today on Shri Investigates Shrimps, we are uncovering how Class A drugs end up in quiet country streams. I packed my bags and headed straight to National Oceanography Centre in Southampton and Imperial College in London to dive in deeper into the subject, but discovered something that's hiding in plain sight, yet is far more dangerous for the ecosystem.
Well, initially we started to look at, or wanted to look at, neonicotinoids. These are pesticides that were going to be banned in the UK in about 2019. So a little bit of serendipity, really. Complete shock. I wasn't expecting that at all. It was just mind-blowing that in such a rural setting that we were finding cocaine in every shrimp sample that we looked at.
The consumption of cocaine in London can kind of vary anywhere between 20 and 30 kilograms of cocaine consumed per day. It's not that cocaine is terribly impactful on these organisms in comparison to, say, like a pesticide, the reason we were there in the first place, but that, you know, you've got a very complicated chemical signature, if you like, of the things we use every single day, reflected in the river and in the wildlife that live within it.
30 kilograms of Class A drugs in a country's water cycle, leaving every tested shrimp loaded with cocaine, sounds like the ultimate story. But the professor set me straight. Illicit drugs were just the headline grabber. The real disaster was what they were originally hunting for. To understand what this chemical cocktail does to our waterways, I joined Thames 21.
We need our rivers to be healthy, so water is life. Raising awareness is the first step. Once you can raise awareness, you can build an army of citizen scientists and volunteers to use that data, to take it to the powers that be, to make those changes, to make our rivers healthier.
I think they should see the work we're doing then and see how people get really passionate about fixing these problems, but also they should see what happens if we weren't here. You know, if we didn't take action, how bad would it get? That's the kind of thing that probably would shock them into action themselves.
Local volunteers can test the waters and pull out trash, but they can't rewrite the law. To see how this fight is being taken to the top, I headed to Westminster to meet MP Jaz Athwal. He's been leading a fierce campaign to stop sewage dumping in his local river Roding, summoning water executives and regulators directly to the Parliament to demand real accountability.
At the moment, only 14%, are judged to be okay. And that means 86% are struggling, of which Thames Water is a big share in that 86%. So I know what the government wants. The act that they're bringing in is there to actually make sure that the water companies respond the way the public wants it to respond, which is improve services. Do what it says on the tin. The government is saying you've got to put service before profits going to shareholders. And I think that's where it's going wrong at the moment. And the whole point of nationalisation is to make sure that any profits that are made are reinvested. There are so many things that could happen, and they're not happening at the moment.
While Westminster argues over broken infrastructure, the experts dropped a truth bomb on me. Cocaine in shrimp makes a good media frenzy, but the silent killers choking our waterways aren't hidden in black markets or Victorian drains. They are sitting right on our living room carpets and kitchen shelves.
A group of chemicals that often exceeds any regulatory guidelines are metals, still there, and all the industrial chemicals. 350,000 chemicals are produced, synthetic ones, globally. and we have very little environmental risk assessment on those chemicals.
Recently we worked on a project actually looking at the same pesticide that was banned in 2018, this neonicotinoid pesticide called imidacloprid. And after the ban, that substance was removed from outdoor agriculture use in the UK and then was rerouted into a different market, and that is for its use on companion animals, so pets, cats and dogs. It's often used as the spot-on treatments for ticks and fleas. We found actually that that practice is ending up with residues entering through contact with your hands, with your clothes, with your furnishings, with your floor after you apply the medication to the animal. So when you wash your clothes, you wash your floor, it ends up down the wastewater network and out into the environment almost entirely. And this substance is really interesting because its chemistry is different to that of cocaine. It is actually not removed at all by wastewater treatments. And we found that most of the rivers in the UK are impacted by this substance, mainly in urban areas. So it's really quite an interesting story, going from an agricultural signature of use on crops to now being used in your home for pets and then contaminating urban waterways. And the problem with that is these chemicals are designed to kill. They're designed to kill wildlife, particularly invertebrates, so insects and things like that.
The laboratory data proved our rivers are quietly absorbing our chemical habits. But to see what this invisible crisis looks like in real time, I put on a pair of waders and waded knee-deep into the river mud with the team at Thames 21 for a day of citizen science.
There's another thing called cartographer. So Thames 21. So that also has, we're talking about the river fly monitoring, so that we do once a month also.
So it goes to national data sets, is what you're saying? Is that it
well,
goes
there is a national, yes,
it goes to national
but all this
data
comes
sets,
to Thames 21.
It goes via us,
it goes
to national data sets. So these little Hannah checkers, back in the day, you would have had to take these water samples back to a lab to deal with them. And whereas this Hannah checker kit is amazing because it's this tiny little machine, this green, you see that green machine, and you can do it on site. That box is a lab. It's a tiny little lab. So how amazing is that?
Next test I'm going to do is for phosphates.
Yeah.
Phosphates can come from fertilisers, which we're not far from a golf course, so it's could be possible, and allotments. So that could increase the levels. But generally in urban rivers, that's less agricultural sources and less common.
Stuff, isn't it?
The most common source of phosphates is from detergents. Washing powder, for example, dishwasher detergents and stuff have lots of phosphates in, and that kind of pollution will drastically increase the levels. But I don't think I've seen 2,000 before.
No.
I mean, previously when I've been trying to trace a pollution, I found 1,500s. They also found pesticides like fipronil, which is used in tick and flea treatments for dogs and pets. So that can be from dogs going and swimming in the river. I mean, this is a spot that this is a popular dog walking area, so they all have a pop in there at this spot when it's hot. But actually, the university believe that is also the levels we were finding wouldn't account for that it was more likely that it's coming from laundry, again, because anybody that's got a dog knows when you come in for a walk, you have to towel them off, and they have towels that they sit on their bed, or you wash their bedding, or even your furniture and your own clothes. Even after you've washed them, you wash your hands, that all ends up in the sewer. So if that sewer is misconnected, it's going to end up in a river.
If we're doing water quality testing, it's normally ammonium phosphates that are fairly high. They have a range of sources where they come from, but rule of thumb is misconnected pipes, surface runoff from agriculture or roads, and maybe wastewater and sewage.
Detecting chemicals in water is one thing. Understanding what this toxic chemical actually does to the living creatures is a whole different ballgame. Talking to Dr. Nic, he revealed something mind-blowing. Antidepressants are making fish so relaxed and chill that they are forgetting their survival instinct, leaving them far more susceptible to predators. And meanwhile, residual estrogen from birth control pills is giving fish an identity crisis, turning male fish intersex. But that's only half of the story. It brings us back to nature's ultimate game show: adapt or perish. Dr. Nic showed me two total extremes on that spectrum. A single drug that pushed an entire species to the brink of extinction, and another creature forced to rewrite its own DNA just to survive our wastewater.
Asian vultures, where cattle in Asia were given diclofenac, NSAID drug, but when the cattle died, the vultures came in and fed off the carrion. These vultures were exceptionally vulnerable to diclofenac, and it's estimated about 99% of the vulture population died in Pakistan and through other parts of Asia, which is quite dramatic within that. Southwest of England and Cornwall specifically has high levels of mining activity. The mining's not there anymore, but the legacy of the mining is. So some of these rivers, the one that we were working on, the River Hale, has exceedingly high concentrations of metals, and in fact regions of the river, sort of like Barron, of invertebrates. But there's populations of brown trout that reside in that river, which is highly surprising because brown trout in the laboratory are one of the most sensitive fish species to metals. So how they overcome that is that they are able to increase the expression of a gene known as metallothionein, which binds up the metal. Yeah, potentially long term, might be able to, species might be able to adapt to some of these issues.
The chemical complexity of surface water is immensely difficult to unravel. It's very difficult to say that there is a very strong link between cause and effect, because that mixture of chemicals is changing so frequently all of the time. But there are chemicals in every sample that we test. There are medications, illicit drugs, pesticides, industrial chemicals, forever chemicals, metals, anything you can think of in every single sample. And those wildlife have to cope with that, and they have to adapt to that. So there can be some impacts on wildlife in terms of their ecosystem balance, for example. So we often see populations of some species being enriched because others have died away or have been impacted by a chemical, and that throws the whole system out of balance. So if you knock out these species, you might think, well, why does that matter? These little shrimp, they're called Gammarus pulex, is the one we look at. They're very low down in the food chain, so they act as food for prey. They also recycle nutrients. They clean detritus and litter and leaf litter, and they clean rivers, essentially. So if you knock them out and they're gone, you've got this inbuilt natural resilience mechanism being removed as well. So their ecosystem service is gone, and therefore you end up with a very polluted river with perhaps a lot of algae growing in it, unhealthy, and then you can start to see human impacts as well.
With wildlife paying the ultimate price for our chemical habits, the million-dollar question arises. Who takes the fall for this? Is it the government, the water companies, or the public?
Can't pick one player. It's a variety of people. We're urging everyone to make a difference. So water companies, of course, have to up their investment in infrastructure to stop the pollution, sewage pollution at source. The regulators need to grow some teeth and take those polluters to task. The government needs to introduce legislation to help make our rivers healthier, and the consumer and the public need to also help with the challenge in helping to save water.
Everybody's talking about it because if you look at it from every single metric that you can measure the services provided by Thames Water, it seems to be struggling, and it's at the bottom of the list on almost every single metric, whether it's the quality of the water, whether it's the sewage flowing into our rivers, whether it's the flooding that happens when we have torrential rain, or these sewers that are being talked about as being Victorian style sewers. everything is falling apart. But what you have got is that the Parliament, cross-party, everybody wants one thing, and that is for all the water companies to really improve. So where there's a will, there is a way.
It's a systematic problem in that the people with the power to change this and the resources to change this aren't doing so. But also it's a behavioural problem that we're all guilty of to some degree, and it takes collective effort, not just from people like us, but from broadcasters, from schools, to inform people from the earliest age possible that their behaviour directly impacts the ecosystems they live by, whether they be in the urban areas or in the countryside.
What we will end up with is dead rivers. We had this in London in 1858 during the Great Stink. And in the Great Stink, the River Thames was declared ecologically dead. So much so that it stank, it caused cholera across the city, and it forced Parliament to shut. I would argue we're in the era of the great ooze now, whereby we are starting to see so much sewage overflowing into our rivers that it is actually oozing out into the surrounding waters. So our rivers are really, there's not one river in the UK that has good chemical status, and very few of them have good ecological status. So we simply cannot carry on. Healthy water means healthy people.
It's always easy to look at a polluted river and altered wildlife and feel completely hopeless. So is there a way out of this mess? The short answer is yes, but there's no single silver bullet. Fixing our waterways takes a two-pronged attack. Hard political policy at the top and citizen power at the ground.
There are quick wins that the water companies need to do. One of them is very simple. Water flows down our roads like rivers every time there's torrential downpour, and we get flooding every year. And one of the simple fixes is, why not install water butts in most houses, and therefore when it rains, most of that's caught in the water butts, and then it flows slowly into the ecosystem again. And what the government's trying to do is make sure that the investment comes in at the expense of the shareholder profits, rather than the shareholders being paid at the expense of the consumer, who's having to foot the bill, a higher bill every single year. And what local councils have to do is change the planning infrastructure and make sure that you can actually have soakaways, so that there is a water flows in and it goes into the soakaway inside the front garden or into water butts. And as long as you change the planning rules, then you are going to make sure that some of the more expensive stuff, like the making the capacity of the sewers bigger, which is going to take a lot of money. So let's do the smaller things first, the ones that don't cost as much money.
It's not one person that can make a difference. It's working collaboratively. So we say, join our army of volunteers, join us. We have lots of events throughout the year to tackle challenges and tackle problems. So join us.
We're led by volunteers. We've got an army of about 7,000 volunteers that do all the work for us, and they're pivotal to what we do here. So yeah, their data is paramount. It allows us to understand how the river is changing and how anthropogenic pressures are affecting it. So yeah, they're the lifeblood of Thames 21.
What started as a wild headline about cocaine-infused shrimp turned out to be a mirror held up to us all. Our rivers are absorbing every chemical, prescription and habit we wash down our drains. The rule of nature might be adapt or perish. But it's time we adapted our habits before our rivers run completely dry of life. I'm Shri, and this was Shri Investigates Streams.